Hey everyone, it's Alex, and you're listening to the Everyday Stories podcast, a podcast about the everyday stories from the people you know and the people you don't know, here to help you learn a thing or two about life and the stories that define us. Today we're talking to Karen Sargent, a hospice chaplain, spiritual director, and ceremony officiant based in Rhode Island. She believes that talking about difficult and taboo topics is what brings us closer together and what helps us learn about ourselves. She believes that death is a part of life and that we can learn from the dying. When she's not doing hospice-y things, you can probably find her at a coffee shop, eating popcorn, or playing with her dog, Waffle. So, Karen,
So true.
welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. I forgot what I wrote in my bio, and I was listening, and I was like, "Yep, that's all accurate to me." Like I
I
didn't write
love
it
the eating
myself.
popcorn.
Yeah,
The eating popcorn part is so
I
funny.
love
But,
popcorn. That's my favorite snack.
oh, same, me too. I literally just ate some popcorn yesterday. But wanted to first start by asking you, could you explain to people what hospice is and more specifically what a hospice chaplain does?
Yes, two big things. So hospice. Let's. I hope there's no doctors who listen to this because they're gonna be like, "Oh God." So basically, there's different levels of medical care. And people go on hospice when they've been determined to have a terminal diagnosis of 6 months or less. I think it may be two doctors. Obviously, at least one doctor has to certify that. People can be on hospice for more or less time than that. It's because it's like really hard to quantify like when someone might die. People can try, but it's really difficult. So people go on hospice with like a terminal diagnosis. Maybe it's like dementia or cancer or COPD or whatever it might be. And usually it's through some type of like medical agency, right? So the hospice I work for is through like a medical organization or a medical system that's in Rhode Island. And they do mostly home care. So, like, some hospices have facilities, some hospices, like, you can be on hospice in the hospital. It's called GIP, which is inpatient hospice. But a lot of people, very understandably, like, they want to die at home. And that's what's most comfortable for them. So, a lot of people do hospice at home. So what happens when you get on hospice is people, like doctors, will discharge all unnecessary medications and kind of pare it down to the bare minimum for like comfort and quality of life. And then you get a hospice team of people. So you get a doctor, you get usually a nurse who's a case manager, you get like CNAs or home health aides, same thing, called different. You get a social worker, get a chaplain, that's me, and you might get, if you want, like volunteer as well. So all these people, while you're on hospice, and you can decline any of them besides like the nurses who have to come and like do their assessments and stuff.
Sure.
But all these people are here to support and care for people while they are journeying towards the end of their life. So that's kind of the whole hospice. There's like a little bit more, it's obviously complicated, but that's like the most basic
Got it.
understanding. Do you have any like questions about that, or can I explain anything further?
No, that was great.
Okay.
I would love to get into your role specifically as a chap.
Man, chaplaincy, and I don't know if we'll have time to get into how I got into chaplaincy. That's a whole other story. But I consider my role as a chaplain, whether it's in the hospital or on hospice or like, there's military chaplaincy, prison chaplaincy. Everyone is different. Each chaplain is different, but I consider my role twofold. So chaplains are kind of seen as, I think, like a bridge between like they kind of appear in places where there's not explicit religion necessarily. So like outside of church or worship environments. Um, and lots of chaplains like me are not affiliated with a particular religious denomination. And actually, like, we're here, my job, and I take this very seriously, is to care for people of all people, regardless of religion. And my job is to like support people on their journey. And each person is unique. Each person's connection with religion or spirituality is unique. So I'm along with that. So one part of my role is that if someone is like explicitly religious or spiritual and they have like specific spiritual or religious things that they need, that maybe they can't access in other ways, my job is to help facilitate that. So, like some people who are Catholic at the end of their life, they might want what's used to be known as last rites, but now it's called Sacrament of the Sick. So, if they don't have a parish priest, my job is to find someone to like find a priest
Oh,
to
okay.
do that. Um, I can't do that because I'm not Catholic, but it would be to find a priest who can facilitate that, or maybe someone wants a rabbi or an imam or whatever. Maybe someone wants like a crystal, So specific things that people that are important to people, like for their
Oh,
religious practice.
interesting.
And then the other part of that is if someone is not, well, it's not exclusive of religion or spirituality. I think everyone has a story to tell, kind of like you've discovered and
For
you
sure.
do on your podcast. But my job is emotional support. So, at all stages of life, but especially on hospice, people like the thought of dying and death brings up a lot of like difficult feelings and questions. Not always, but a lot of the time someone might have, they might be like, why did this happen? Like, why is God doing this to me? They have
Yeah.
these really big, like, existential questions. And my job, part of my job, is to be there with people and explore whatever they want to explore in that way. Maybe it's related to death, maybe it's not. Sometimes I sit and I chit chat and we just hang out, but
Yeah.
sometimes these big questions come up.
And I know that you mentioned that the reason why you got into becoming a chaplain is like a whole other story. I do want to get into that, but could you give me like the two
um,
minute, like if you had to, you only had a couple minutes to tell it, how would you tell it?
okay, was exploring options after getting into the workforce after college. Um, Wanted to work one-on-one with people, but didn't necessarily want to do social work or counseling. I wanted to kind of like focus more on the spiritual aspect. And I learned that chaplaincy was a thing. I didn't know what it was. A lot of people have like they might know like military and they might hear like military chaplain, like that's really common. So like they might know that, but there's like all different types of chaplains. So yeah. So basically I was like, I think that's what I want to do. Um, so basically, I went to grad school for that. You get a degree called a Master's of Divinity. And then I wanted to work in the hospital environment. So you need like it's a program called Clinical Pastoral Education, and it's the training for chaplains. So hospitals, most of them require 4 units of CPE. And so I did an internship while I was in grad school at a hospital, and then I did a year-long residency after grad school, and that got me my units. So I initially started off in the hospital environment, but I ended up in hospice.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then when you first started working in hospice, is there a particular story or moment that you have where you were like, oh, this this is what hospice is?
Oh, that's such a good question. It's always so hard to think of stories because I'm like, anytime I get put on the spot, I'm like, I forget anything I've ever done ever.
So
It's
fair.
like so, but I think I'm trying to think if there's like one person. There's not like one story I can particularly think of. And actually, it's kind of interesting because I've seen people die and I've been around people who have died, but actually a lot more in the hospital environment because it can be very sudden and traumatic. But hospice, for me, it's not just about end of life, it's about like the journey that we take to get there. So I just feel like as people are going along this journey, like for me, there's a big sense of like yes, like I feel like that all along the way. Like there isn't just like one moment, but I can say like I've had a patient who she was ready to die. And she was ready. She was like, my husband has passed. Like I'm 90 years old. I want to go be with my husband. And yeah, and she had what I would consider a really peaceful death. Um, and it was honestly just like lovely, and being able to support people in these like like to kind of help promote like peacefulness and calm like at the end of life. Like I'm just like, yes. That's what I love, that's what I want to do, and that's what's
Yeah.
really meaningful for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned as well that especially people who are quite religious, they'll have these big questions of like, why is like my God doing this to me? How do you answer those questions?
Yeah. And I will also clarify and say some people who aren't religious feel like that too.
Like, why is
Like
this
it's
happening?
common. It's really, really common. Why is this happening to me? Why? I feel like on some level we all want like this like cosmic justice, and
Mm,
we like a lot of people, at least in Western culture, kind of feel like things have to be fair and things have to be equal. Um, and I have discovered, whatever we believe, I'm like, life doesn't really work like that, and death doesn't really work like that. Like at the end of at the end of the day, like we're all gonna die. Um,
so
and
true.
there's no like,
That's like the mentality I live by.
yeah,
I'm like, might as well just do it because at the end of the day, someone said this to me in high school. Someone said, at the end of the day, we're all going to turn to dust, so might as well.
might as
I was like,
well.
so true.
You know, but when people ask me these big questions, it's not my job to answer them. It's my job to explore it with them.
Yeah.
So they teach you this in chaplain school, and in therapy, a lot of therapists do the same thing. Um, I would usually say something like, "That's a really big and profound question," and just acknowledging that like they're asking like this huge question, and it is like, how can anyone answer that? Um, and I might explore with them like, what do you think? I like kind of turning it back on people because at the end of the day, it's not about me or my beliefs. It's about them exploring their beliefs, you know? Um, yeah, so that's kind of how I like to approach it. And honestly, like a lot of the times people are like, I don't know. And I don't know either. I don't have an
Yeah.
answer. But
Yeah.
but can we find peace with the not knowing?
Mm. Because I feel like in our world, everyone wants to know everything all the time. And the idea of not knowing, I think, scares people, which kind of
Absolutely.
goes to my next question of why do you think so many people are afraid of death?
I I have been told, someone told me once that people are not necessarily afraid of death, but they're afraid of the dying process. I think personally it's a mix of both. Um, some people might be scared of what happens, like of not knowing what happens after they die. Um, some people might be worried that they will go to hell. Like
Mm,
there's some people have really they're like, I don't know. I guess I've lived a good life, but I don't know, and there's like that concern that maybe that will happen. Some people might be like, I hope I don't want to leave my family. Like, I hope they're going to be okay. Like there's
Mm.
all of these there's like so many different reasons why someone could be scared of dying. Um, yeah. And then I also think people are sometimes scared of like, as I said, the dying process. Like, will it hurt? Will I
Mm.
be in pain? Um, what will happen? And then I like to reassure people as much as I mean, we don't know. We can't step into someone's body, right, and experience what they're experiencing. But the role of hospice and the hospice team is to make sure the dying process is as comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
So we're lucky there's medications that can help with that. And it doesn't, like, there's a really common misconception that medications like morphine or something will speed death along, but that is like absolutely not true. Um, there's medications that just kind of relieve pain, anxiety, help, and it just
Mm.
kind of help support the body as it naturally does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that you specifically deal with a lot of people who are in the process of that journey towards death. I would love to ask you, like, are you personally afraid of dying?
No, I don't. Well, let me clarify that by saying not now,
Mm.
but I don't know what will happen when I get there. Like, to which what I hope is a long and happy life. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
I hope that I am like 95, on and have lived a full life. Um, and personally, but like right now at this point, I'm not.
Yeah.
Are
I
you?
would love to
Yeah.
hear too about, oh, did you ask me if
Yeah, are
I
you?
am? Funny enough,
Yeah.
no. Because I think like I I mean, I don't know. I'm just learning about hospice now and what it means to be a chaplain, but I think I've always viewed life as I might as well just live it because either way I'm going to die, whether if it's now or if it's 80, 70 years from now. Like I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yep.
So I might as well like live my life each day as best as I can. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it doesn't, weirdly enough, it doesn't scare me,
Yeah.
which I feel like as a young person it should, but it
Hmm.
doesn't.
That's how I
Um,
feel too. For me, it's a privilege to get older and hopefully wiser. Maybe not wiser, but at least older. Um, because I've seen there's lots of people who do not get that opportunity. Like I've seen death of all ages, especially young people. I used to work with kids as well. And um, there's just no guarantee. So I don't necessarily take like a YOLO like mentality, but I'm more just like life is what we make of it. And I believe in not everyone believes in an afterlife. I believe in some type of afterlife that I feel is peaceful. Um, I don't know what's there, but I believe that it's something that will be good. So I don't
yeah.
have that fear of like wrath or judgment of like a vengeful or angry God or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love, you mentioned that you have worked with kids in hospice.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, have you seen trends in terms of, because my perception is if you are an older person that, like not the typical age for death, but like you are older, and I feel like older folks think like, okay, it's like my time is coming, like it's nearing, and they can accept it more. Whereas I feel like with young people, it's like they're probably, I mean, my assumption is they're asking more of the, why is this happening to me? Like I want to live this whole life, but like
I
I
see.
can't to the same extent
Mm,
as I thought.
so it hasn't, I will clarify, I wasn't working with kids in hospice. Although
Oh,
I do
okay.
have a colleague who does do that um, from back a
Yes.
different time. But it was in the hospital. So and I will honestly I didn't get to really have a lot of those conversations with kids because they were in the critical care, like the ICU for kids.
Mm,
But that being said, the adults in their life ask those questions often, all the time. Like,
yeah.
there's this idea, right, that exists that young people are not supposed to die, right? Like, you're supposed to grow up and you're supposed to get old and you're supposed to live this long life. Just, it doesn't always happen. And
Mm,
that is the sad truth of things. You know, like anything, as I think I said earlier, anything can happen at any time. And I personally don't believe that it's because of some like targeted, you like divine campaign,
yeah.
like there's no, I don't think that there's a God that's like, we're gonna take this child because it's their time, you know? Um, and I think anyone who has like universal answers for difficult things, I think that they are I don't know what the word I want to use is. I just think they're taking the easy way out when people say like everything happens for a reason or like
Mm,
it was meant like it was God's will, you know? I'm like that's a platitude that like doesn't address the difficulty of it. Um so anyway, I don't know if that answered your question, but everyone regardless of the age like asks questions like
mm,
this. And I do think kids, the ones that I was kind of able who weren't as like who were able to talk and stuff, they all have questions. Everyone has questions. Kids might just express it differently or ask it differently.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering too, as it relates to your work, has there ever been a moment where you've gotten very emotional or like have shown, because I feel like working with like people who are dying can take a toll on you mentally.
Mhm.
So like what are those experiences when you're trying to navigate your own emotions while also supporting someone else's?
Yeah. Um, Very good questions. I will say I think working in the hospital environment is was actually much more difficult than working in hospice. That's my personal experience because hospice, you kind of know that someone is going to die. That's what they're there for. Like, hate to say it like that, but honestly, that's kind of like the expectation coming on hospice. That being said, some people are discharged from hospice, and that's people can graduate from hospice, which is yay, yay them, right?
Yes.
Um, but I feel like I get to have the time to kind of prepare myself. But of course, like when you get close with patients, and their families, like the patient I mentioned earlier, yeah, of course it's really hard. Um, but I also like feel like I have the inner resources and the beliefs where I'm like, I think that they are like wherever they are, it's peaceful and good. You know, whether it's like they turn to nothing and they go back into like the fabric of the earth, you know, or they are somewhere in an afterlife, living it up. Like I'm like, okay, like they did it. They completed their journey through this life into whatever comes next. So that brings me a lot of peace and comfort.
Mm,
Yeah, but I will say, like, the hospital environment, like, some people are amazing at it, and I wish I could have been one of those people. It was really meaningful working with kids, and I did adults as well, but um, the kids especially left a huge impact on me. It was it was very difficult. That was super hard because I would get close with kids and
yeah.
they would die, right? And I carry all of them with me in my heart. And it was difficult.
Yeah. I was gonna say, is there like a particular patient or story that you have that has left like a lasting, like you think about it, like you just hold, I know that you hold like every patient like deeply within yourself, but is there just like one where like this like has left a lasting impact and will for the rest of my life?
Yes. Um, but I don't know how much I can share.
Mm.
Just because of, for privacy and then also because he was a baby. Um, but I will say there was a baby that I got really close to, and I spent a lot of time with him. Um, and his death was just really sad. Um,
Yeah.
and there's also kids that I've done funerals for as well, and those are all like some I knew more than others. Um, but obviously, yeah, all of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
I carry all of those. The adults, I think it'll be interesting actually because this hospice that I'm at now is a lot of people who I will get to know over a long period of time. So I'm actually really interested to see like how that will be for me, and if it will be difficult or not. But yeah, it's really the kids for me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is there, so out of all of your time working in hospice, do you have like three takeaways or like
Ooh.
lessons that you've learned? Because I
Mm.
also think too, like some of the biggest conversations or things that you can learn can come from people who are dying because they just have like this whole other perspective about life that like at some point we
Mm.
will see, but we're not experiencing that now. So would love to know like three like big lessons that you've learned.
Yes. Oh man. This might be practical advice, but I have learned this. Um, get your affairs in order. Get your get your
Oh,
affairs in order. Um, make your will, make your medical like wishes known. Make your funeral and burial arrangements if you can prepay for them. I know it's like super random, but I have
no, I love
I
that.
have seen like how difficult it can be, and I've experienced it personally in my own life where when someone dies and they don't have any arrangements, how difficult it can be for family. um and it can actually really cut into grief and grieving time because not that grief ever goes away, but just because people are trying to like get the paperwork and like do all these things. So if it's possible, get everything as settled as possible. Get your last wishes out, do all of those things if possible. Um, let's see, what else? I'm like, that's a big one. That's a huge one. Um, I would say the most important parts of life are made up of ordinary moments. Yeah, a lot of the people who I have talked to at the end of their life, sure, they've traveled or they've done X, Y, and Z, but time and time again, people have said the most meaningful part of their life is their spouse or their family, their
Mm.
kids, their friendships. It's not necessarily like I did this huge thing. It's like I was with the people who love me. And I hear people talk about that all the time. I had a good life. I was married for 55 years, you know. Um, my kids are, grown up and, I had a good family, like I was able to do that. The last one that I can think of is death is a journey. It's a journey. Um, a lot of people who work in hospice like to say um, death is a lot like birth. It can be, yeah, it can be quick, it can be slow. Some deaths can be harder than others. Um, and people can, for lack of a better word, labor in death. Like sometimes, at the end of life, people, their breathing patterns change and they'll say patient has labored breathing, right? And that means it's difficult for them to breathe. There's medications that can help with that. Um, but yeah, death is kind of just the flip side of coming into this world.
So make your affairs,
Yep.
he- like focus on your relationships
Focus on
more
your
than
relationships.
anything,
Yep.
and the ordinary,
Yep.
and then death is a journey.
Death is a journey. Yeah.
I love all of those. Those are awesome.
Thanks. I can't believe I just thought of
Um,
them.
no, they were so great. Okay, there are two questions. Both like one of them kind of relates to yours, but I usually ask it at the very end. This one is kind of a shift. But I watched recently a documentary. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it used to be it's like the founder or like former CEO of PayPal, and he's trying to biohack his body and he takes like hundreds of like vitamins and medications a day, has like this regimen, does all these like x-ray skin things, basically spends a ton of money trying to biohack his body to
Sure.
almost like age backwards.
Mm.
And I wanted to know, like, what are your thoughts on biohacking, like to try and live longer? And also, does how does stories like this impact people's views about death?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Such good questions. Um, maybe you could tell from my reaction. Not necessarily a huge biohacking fan. Um,
Yeah.
I think like stuff like that is like a symptom of larger culture's fear about death. Like
Mm.
if we exercise, if we eat right, if we don't have any sugar, if we like take green juice every day, if we blah 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 blah, we won't die. And like I see it, like there's so many. Sorry, I'm a lot of feelings about this.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God,
there's
go
so many
off.
books. Like if you even just go to a bookstore, right? Like I've seen books that are like beat death or like age backwards or like whatever, and I'm like, that doesn't happen. People Something else I've learned is that maybe a fourth takeaway is that anything can happen to anyone. You could be the healthiest person in the world and you can still get cancer.
Yeah.
Like, and I actually remember in my internship I had this patient and I only think I saw her once or twice maybe, but because that kind of happens in the hospital. People come in and they go. Um, but she was like, I avoided like sweet things for so much of my life because I was worried about my weight, I was worried about health, and she's like, and here I am. Like I got like she had breast cancer and I think it was metastasized. So like not great, not a good outlook. Like prognosis. And I'm like, you can do so many things, but like death is inevitable.
Yeah.
It's gonna come. Yeah. I think that kind of goes hand in hand. Like, not a fan of biohacking. Like, I feel like sure, like people can do what they want to be healthy. Like, of course, that's super important. Um, I think our bodies are our gift, and it's really amazing to be able to live in them. Um, But I also think that at the end of the day, whether you're rich or you're poor or you biohack or you don't, you're gonna die. Like,
Yeah.
period. End of story. um, that's it.
Yeah.
So I think stuff like that, like when I hear something like that, I'm like, oh, you're afraid of dying.
Oh, 100%.
Like,
When I like watched that documentary, I was like, why are you doing this? Just like accept your fate like everyone else's, that we're going to die at some point.
yeah,
Uh,
that's exactly
I
how I feel. I
Anyways,
know.
so I have one last question that I've
Yes.
been asking people. It's the question that I like to finish on, but what is something that you've learned specifically in the past year that you're going to take into your next year of life?
Ooh, this is hard. This is a hard question. But I would say overall, we can trust ourselves and we can trust our bodies. We can trust our minds, our spirits. And it's important that we lean into that. Um, I obviously I'm a cautious person, so I like to give caveats, that yes, sometimes our brains do lie to us, especially those of us who might have neurodivergence or anxiety
For sure.
disorders, such as myself. Thank you, medication, for helping me. Thank you, science. Um, but I spent a lot of the year kind of thinking about myself and how I like exist in this world. And I think it's just important that we go forward with confidence, believing in
Totally.
us and our abilities to do hard things.
Yes. We can do hard
We can do hard
things.
things, and we have to do hard things. Like, that's the thing. We can't avoid the hard thing,
For sure.
And
Oh,
if it's death, death is a hard thing sometimes, and we can do that as well.
totally.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Karen, for hopping on the podcast. I love this discussion so much.
Me
And I
too.
hope that everyone that has been listening has learned a ton because I know that I have.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yes.
Before we end, can I actually ask you what was one thing that you learned that you didn't
Oh,
know?
you're asking me a
Yeah, I would love that.
question.
Yeah. What did you take away?
One thing that I learned from our conversation, and maybe I already knew this, but I like that you said it. One, I like how you talked about cosmic, what did you say? Cosmic justice in the
Justice.
world.
Yeah. Yep.
I really love that because I recently had a conversation and interviewed someone, and her name was Dayan, or is Dayan, and she was the child, she was like a pastor's child. So we spent the conversation talking about Christianity, and I kind of pushed some of the questions about how, there's a lot of shame and guilt in that religion because I was raised like Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked all about that. But your view about like you are supporting like all religions, all spiritualities, like however you, whatever you value or believe, like you're gonna support that person.
Mm-hmm.
But the overall like thing that links us is that this like we have this like cosmic justice that we need. I really like that statement.
Thank you.
Something
I
about
forget
that.
exactly how I said it, but I feel like there's not necessarily like this like being that is causing like terrible things to happen,
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes like we can go through life being like, why is this like God or whatever like targeting me? And I feel like it's important to sometimes be like, it's not about me. Like that would be
No,
a
it's
very
not. Yeah.
specific thing for God to do. Anyway, and there's lots of different theologies on it, and I can respect that, but I hear what you're saying, and I
Yeah.
hope for you or for other people who might be listening, like my hope is that like it gives people some ease and some grace. Like that's one of the things I hope people take away from this as well, that there's a lot
Yeah.
of grace and like hope and joy in life, and like I think the universe gives that to us, and I also think we have to give that to ourselves as well.
Yeah. Well, I also liked your viewpoint as well about how, yes, death can be like quite sad, but the way that you almost approach it as well is in this like almost like a joyful, like very content
Yeah.
and acceptance of it
Yeah.
that I really like that take on that.
Death can be beautiful
Um,
too. Yeah, it can be, which
yeah.
is like if people who don't work with death and dying and hospice, like some people hear that and they're like, that's so freaking weird. And I'm like, okay, but like you've never experienced like a family at the bedside of someone who's dying, like holding their hand and like kissing their forehead and like singing songs or playing music or telling them the things that they love about them. And I'm like, that's beautiful,
Yeah.
And that is like I think that's one of the most beautiful things that can happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, thank you so
You're
much again,
welcome. I know we
Karen.
went over, but I appreciate
No,
it.
totally okay. I like to also end every episode with a quote.
Ooh, okay.
And so I was trying to figure out like what kind of quotes were related to our conversation. And this is a quote that like truly has stuck in my mind. I heard it during COVID, and like, it's something that I actually live by and probably will live by for the rest of my
Oh,
life.
tell me.
And it's the psychologist Tom Golovich
Okay.
who did a study and found that the biggest regret people have at the end of their life is not regretting the things that they did, but the things they didn't do.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
something I literally live my life by. Like, that's
Yes.
my mantra,
I think about
is
that
that.
all the time too.
Yeah,
It's informed how I live my life as well, for sure.
totally. And hopefully it can inform other people out there as well that are listening to live their life that
I
way.
would love
Just go do it.
do it.
Go do it. We're all going to die
Do the
anyways.
thing. Do the thing.
Yes,
Take
totally.
the
Well,
trip.
thank you again, Karen. Thank you for everyone listening, and we'll see you next week.